All right, my name is John Maibauer. I'm a senior undergraduate here at the School of Health and Human Sciences. I do my undergrad research out of Dr. Hubel's lab, but the study that I'm going to be presenting, the effects of kinesiotape on delayed onset muscle soreness, is Dr. Kelly Nagel's study. She is the PI on this study. So to start off with a little bit of background information, I want you to understand, or we do understand, that muscle damage, the physical damage that occurs, it occurs because of mechanical tension that occurs within the muscle when we create force. And this force is created, this mechanical tension occurs during muscular contractions. And in particular for this study, we're looking at eccentric muscular contractions, which is when the muscle is lengthening and contracting at the same time. We look at this the eccentric portion in particular because it causes more muscular damage and more severe symptoms of DOMS. And then this muscular damage causes not only physical damage to the muscle fibers, but it also causes inflammation to the tissue. This inflammation causes swelling of the tissue. This increased fluid inside the tissue can put pressure on pain receptors inside the tissue and cause sensitivity to pain. And also, this inflammation causes an accumulation of metabolic waste products inside the tissue. And that's where KT comes into play, because people often use KT because it is believed to help relieve some of the symptoms of DOMS by applying tension over the skin of the underlying tissue, which hypothetically is supposed to increase the circulation of the underlying tissue, which they believe helps the rate of clearance of those metabolic waste products. And if none of you, or if some of you don't know what kinesiotape is, on the right here we have an image. This is what we do in the lab. We apply it over the biceps muscle, the non-dominant biceps muscle, with tension, and it's cut in these specific strips by yours truly, Dr. Nagel over there. And it is basically just an elastic athletic tape that is applied over the skin with tension, and people often use it for performance enhancement, injury prevention, and DOMS. And the reason we picked kinesiotape to study is because, for one, it hadn't previously been looked at in this specific muscle group, the elbow flexors, but also there is a good amount of contradictory evidence. There's evidence that supports it, there's evidence that says that it doesn't work, so that's why there's plenty of room to continue to study it, and it's by no means settled science. And the specific purpose of the study is to determine the effects of kinesiotape on the biceps muscle after eccentric exercise looking at the elbow flexor muscles. And the study design included 28 participants. It will, by the end of the study, will include 36 participants, but these are preliminary results based off of 19 females and 9 males. They all went through an eccentric exercise protocol, which was 3 sets of 10 reps of the non-dominant arm of a modified bicep curl of the non-dominant arm. And we took strength measurements immediately before, after, and at 48 hours and 72 hours after the exercise protocol, and then after, right after the post measurements, right after the exercise, we then randomized the groups into 3 groups: a KT group, a sham KT group, and a control group, which had the control group obviously had no KT, and the sham KT got they got KT, but it was applied without tension, so there was no functionality to it. And what I'm reporting on today is just the strength results, some of the strength results that we got. And what this initial graph here shows is the initial strength loss of all the groups. So this is each group. These are the averages of the absolute values of their maximal strength that they could produce during a bicep curl. And when you see here, this is immediately before the exercise intervention, and then you can imagine somewhere in here is when they went through the exercise, And then immediately afterwards, we took post-assessments. And you can see that all groups had significant decreases in strength. And it's important to know that this was all done on the same day. So pre-assessment, did the intervention, then post-assessment. And there was no significant difference between groups, which is, so there was no significant group time interaction. So that's to be expected because they all went through the same protocol and they hadn't received the KT tape, but they all did experience significant strength losses. So we know that the exercise protocol did work. And then what we move on to this graph, which represents the recovery back towards baseline. So this is reported in relative values. So you can imagine we consolidate all the groups down into one point because they're all starting off at the same relative value. They've all now experienced 100% strength loss, right? So then from there we can see a trend back towards baseline, a recovery of strength. You can imagine or think of a steeper slope would indicate a faster recovery timeline. And it's important to know that none of the groups actually returned to baseline at 72 hours. And there was, again, no significant group time interaction. So no group performed better than the other. The KT group did not return towards baseline at a faster rate than the other groups. And these conclusions are just based off of preliminary results, so they're not, final conclusions by any means. But one conclusion is that the exercise protocol did work. The eccentric protocol did induce symptoms of DOMS. We know that because they all experienced significant strength losses. But the KT group did not improve their recovery back towards baseline above either of the other groups. And these are the people that I work with most closely. Dakota Dywert, he's the PhD student that is really in charge of this study at this point. Dr. Hubel, who's represented as a muscle, because I don't use her picture upon her request. And then Dr. Keith Nagel, who is in charge of the undergrad research here. And I just want to thank you guys for letting me speak here. And this is an adorable picture of my son, Oliver, and one of my dogs, Sunny.